In the Perspectrum podcast, we discuss controversial topics. Outside of this context, Michael and I are both working professionals. While doing the show, we are not acting as agents or representatives of our respective institutions, and none of the views that we express reflect the outlooks of our employers. So don't come to my office and throw toilet paper at me.
And I don't have an office, but don't come to my cube.
Welcome to the Perspectrum. I'm Nathan Seelove.
And I'm Michael Bloom.
And we have a doozy of an episode for you all today. Apparently, there was some unexpected news about the Trump trial that I haven't read about yet, so I'm going to react in real time after Michael tells me about it. But we'll talk about that for a little bit. I don't think it's that huge. You know,
probably small potatoes.
Probably small potatoes. But we figured, we haven't talked about Trump in a while, so we might as well do a segment about it. So we'll see what the news is. We'll log on and see what the news is regarding that.
Yep.
And then we're going to have a discussion about Project 2025, which is the fascist handbook, basically.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. It's but it's not just, I think the handbook's a good term. It's not just a policy agenda, as we usually get from the fascists. It's really a how-to manual.
Yeah.
Which makes it all the more terrifying.
Yeah. So it's a lot of Trump tonight. It's a lot of Trump tonight.
It sure is.
God, I hate talking about Trump, but I love talking about Trump, but I hate talking about Trump, but I love talking about Trump. And I've done this spiel before, so let's get into it. So Michael, as I said, I didn't do any research before this first segment.
Sure. Of course.
So I don't know what any of the news is, but one of the things that I like to do just randomly, I like to randomly express facts to people, like just randomly express facts. And this is a fact that I know, when I woke up this morning, I knew that this fact was true. Right.
Sure.
And I assume it must still be because not much, obviously nothing has changed.
Yeah. Historical facts don't change all that much. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So did you know that there has never been a former president who has been convicted of a felony?
Whoa.
Did you know that's true?
Nathan, that is so embarrassing.
Oh, shit.
Because,
what?
Oh my God. You say that you're all into the facts and knowing the story and all that stuff. And as of just a few hours ago, you could not be more wrong.
God damn it.
Piece of shit.
I am shocked. I am reacting in real time. I had no idea that this was going to happen.
Yep, it sure did, and it really caught you by surprise. I can't believe that you claim to know about politics and you don't even know about this.
I could not
Nathan,
be more embarrassed.
You ignorant slut. Let me tell you about what happened. Okay, we've got a jovial tone because something has actually, chickens have finally come home to roost for this Trump guy, at least a little bit. For a short blip of time, justice seems to have been served in some minor way. So, in the state of New York, Trump was just convicted of falsifying business records and furtherance of another crime, in this case, likely campaign finance violation. And that's the tame version. In a more salacious version, Trump was convicted of falsifying business records to cover up a scheme to catch and kill negative stories about him, such as, in this case, an affair he had with a porn star. And in doing so, he committed campaign finance violations and intended to deprive the voters of knowledge prior to the 2016 election. And so just today, after 2 days of deliberation, a 12-person jury in Manhattan unanimously found Trump guilty of all 34 counts of falsifying business records with which he was charged. And so, the dude is finally a convicted felon. Although I guess technically that doesn't quite happen until he's sentenced, I think, he's
convicted. At this point, he's convicted. Just because he's not sentenced doesn't necessarily mean he's not convicted.
Yeah, I just saw some reporting from a few people that that particular term doesn't attach until the charging occurs.
Interesting.
I don't really know why that would be the case. In any case, charging will occur on July 11th, or at least as it's currently scheduled.
Which is 3 days before the Republican National Convention.
Yeah, that could really change nothing, which we'll get into. So basically, yeah, this is a day of jubilation, but also kind of not. Before we dive in, like, it's nice to savor a moment where something like where Trump has actually experienced some measure of criminal consequence for at least one of the many crimes that he has clearly committed and been charged with.
Yeah.
At the same time, though, to Nathan's point, it's a pretty sad state of our country and our government that the presumptive Republican nominee for president, a former president, and someone with a 50-50 chance of becoming president again, was just convicted of a felony.
Yeah. I guess I celebrate this not because I hate Trump, which I do, but I celebrate this because the United States has always had this two-tiered justice system where the rich, the powerful, the elites get away with fucking anything. And in a lot of ways, this entire thing has still, in many ways, been a symptom of the two-tiered justice system because he has been treated with such kid gloves. I mean, every single time he leaves the courtroom, he talks about how corrupt the judge is. He attacks the judge's family. If any normal person in America were in a court, like we're being charged with a crime, and they said that type of shit, like they would have been held in contempt.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They would have been, the gag order would have like, which Trump repeatedly violated. He would have been put in prison already. He would have been put in jail already if he were a normal fucking person.
Yeah.
All right. But he's the former president, so they're going to treat him with kid gloves.
Yeah.
And I hate that. I hate the fact that, we're supposed to live in a republic, which the definition of a republic is that it's governed by the rule of law, which nobody is above. Yeah. All right. And the United States, so often, the rich, powerful elites are above the law. And finally, we have one instance of a rich, powerful elite who has never faced a consequence for anything in his life getting something.
Yeah.
And that's why we should be celebrating this. We shouldn't be celebrating this because we disagree with Trump, because it's kind of fucked up to say you should go to jail because I disagree with you.
Yeah, of course.
We should call him a fascist because we disagree with him. We could call him an asshole for a lot of the things he says. But that's not why you should be celebrating. All right.
Yeah,
just
totally.
want to caution you on that.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And one thing about this case that we shouldn't lose sight of, and we should be really crisp on, because like the Republican media establishment and the Trump campaign and Trump surrogates and, all the butt kissers in line to kiss the royal orange will try to claim that this is a super
sorry, I love that.
that this is a super weak case with no good evidence, that this was a motivated prosecution and a totally corrupt trial and prosecution, and just none of that is the case. To your point, Nathan, like, we shouldn't be celebrating because this guy that we don't like was convicted of something. Like, the fact that justice in this case, at least up to this point, clearly has been served, is the thing that we should be celebrating, even against, a powerful person, a former president. Yeah. And even, despite the very careful kind of political role that the court was kind of playing here, where they're trying not to intervene in the political process and probably were a little too, probably way too conservative on controlling Trump's kind of clearly illegal behavior during the trial process. But all that being said, like, the fact that we have the rule of justice prevailing in this case is pretty exciting. And it's all the excitement that we're going to get out of Trump's criminal.
And historically, it cannot be downplayed how massive this is. I mentioned that Trump is the first former president to be convicted of a crime. Interestingly enough, he's actually not the first person running for president to be convicted of a crime. In fact, in 2020, there was a candidate for the Socialist Party, Eugene Debs, who was actually running for president from a prison cell. He was a member of he was running for the Socialist Party. So it was a third party, you know.
Yeah.
And he was running from a prison cell while he was serving a 10-year federal sentence for telling his supporters to resist the draft, which, by the way, what the fuck?
Yeah.
I feel like that's another story that we should get to at some point. Like, what? You were putting people in prison for 10 years for
10
telling them
years.
for being against the draft? Are you
Yeah.
fucking kidding me? That's that's a subject for another episode, but like,
yeah.
So
but it is the first time a major, like
Yeah.
the candidate for a major political party, not a third party.
yeah, like this guy got 3% of the vote.
Yeah, exactly.
So-
First time a major political candidate has been convicted of a crime.
Exactly. So it is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And the thing is, I can't believe like this entire trial, I have just been dumbstruck at how fucking stupid Trump is.
I know his
Because
behavior.
of like his behavior, his like, you know what normal people do when they're on trial for a crime? You know how most people treat the judge? They kiss their ass. All right? They kiss their ass. This is the guy who controls your fate. And you've been going out there, he's been going out there saying, this guy, he's corrupt, all right? And look at where he's from, which, you know, the guy's Hispanic. So like he's been fucking racist against the guy.
Yeah.
He's been attacking the guy's daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're really going to do that? You're really going to
Try to make an enemy of the person that if
of the
you are
person that
convicted,
controls your fate?
totally
Like,
controls your sentencing.
which
Yeah.
that right there, like if this guy does not get prison time, it's going to be such bullshit. Because just so you all know, it is, in terms of sentencing, it is possible that he will get up to 4 years. It is possible he will get probation.
Mhm.
It is possible that he'll basically get a slap on the wrist.
Yeah. So yeah, the range, it could range from fines only, which I think are about $5,000 per count. So it's like $170,000 in fines, which to a self-professed, billionaire or millionaire or whatever, however he inflates his net worth at this point, is like, to Nathan's point, a slap on the wrist. Like he's just going to
need to. He might need to sell some extra
his,
NFTs. You know.
Yeah, or some Trump signed Bibles or whatever he's hawking these days. Yes, but the maximum sentence is up to 4 years. I think we should not hold our breath for a prison term. So let's get into this question, because I think like there are some natural questions that are out there now that Trump has been convicted. Like 1, will he go to prison? 2, can he appeal? 3, I know people have asked me this a lot, like, can he still be president? 4, will it make him less likely to become president? 5, can he pardon himself, and stuff like that. So maybe let's talk through the prison thing, the prison thing first, because I think that's probably the one that's most like possible, I guess. So currently, like, District Attorney Alvin Bragg has not said whether he'll be seeking a prison sentence for Trump. The sentencing memos are due from the prosecution and the defense on June 13th. So I think we'll know more at that point about what the district attorney is actually pursuing in terms of a sentence. Alvin Bragg has also declined to say whether if he is sentenced to prison time, Trump will have the opportunity to request that he remain free until all of the appeals that he will inevitably file are resolved. He has the opportunity to request to remain free, and Alvin Bragg has not said whether he would oppose that or not. So there's a chance that even if he does go to prison or is sentenced to a prison term, you could have a long period where Trump is out of custody, remaining free and campaigning, and ultimately potentially being elected president while he still has a potential prison term hanging over his head.
Which I just like to point out something, and I pointed this out before. Trump was the unindicted co-conspirator to Michael Cohen.
Yeah.
Michael Cohen was sentenced to 3 years for doing this crime with Donald Trump. All right. And he pled guilty to it.
Which is typically, encourages the judge to reduce your sentence.
Exactly. He was cooperative and he pled guilty to it. Trump has been out there calling the entire system rigged, showing no remorse, which, that's another thing. Usually when it comes to sentences in criminal trials, one of the things that can, potentially get you a lesser sentence is showing remorse.
Sure.
And Trump has not been showing any remorse. All he's been doing is, this chicken shit bullshit about, oh, it's all rigged. It's all rigged. They're so corrupt. Okay. They're corrupt. Yeah. It's a witch hunt, which again, I just like to point out, anybody else in a criminal trial, if they were regularly insulting the judge, that judge would throw the fucking book at them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. And in this case, the most normal treatment Trump got was that, the first kind of step of violating this gag order was $1,000 fine. And it's okay, so you're not going to put him in, not going to charge him with contempt for violating the gag order and insulting the court. But you you would a normal person, but you will impose a tiny little fine like you would impose on someone who's not a millionaire. Let's do this. Yeah, he's just getting the most favorable treatment in any given context.
Yeah, and a lot of the things that Michael talked about, whether he would be out of jail pending appeal, that type of shit is up to the judge.
Yes, that is very much up to the judge.
So the one thing that has already been decided, which I would actually say that this makes sense, he will not be serving in jail pending the sentencing.
Yeah,
which makes sense, because typically you don't do that if it's if it's a nonviolent offense, which this is a nonviolent offense.
Exactly. It's also his first offense, as surprising as that is.
Well, first convicted offense. Keep in mind he was held liable for rape.
Sure, but civilly liable.
Civilly liable, but he is a rapist. Yeah. A court has said that it is more likely than not. A jury of his peers have said that it's more likely than not that he committed rape. Just throwing that out there.
Yeah. We should come back to that when we talk about the political implications of this.
Yeah.
But one thing I did want to call out is so Michael Cohen, I think ultimately was charged and convicted for lying to Congress, even though it was related to the same set of facts. It's a different charge. And in this case, Trump's charged with falsifying business records, which in New York is only a misdemeanor offense and doesn't carry jail time. But because the particular charge was brought and it was alleged that he was doing this in furtherance of another crime, which there are a few different potential crimes that he could have been doing this in furtherance of, that raises it to the level of a felony.
Yeah.
But one analysis from Norm Eisen, who is a legal expert and served as special counsel in the first impeachment of the former president, found that about only 10% or so of convictions of this type in New York resulted in imprisonment. So to your point, I think there are exacerbating circumstances here. Obviously none of those other people manipulated an election and became president potentially on the back of their misdemeanor offense. Yeah. And none of the other people were attacking the judge or violating a gag order or, have been impeached twice and launched an insurrection, all of this kind of stuff. Yeah. At the same time, though, this guy is his first offense, a nonviolent offense, and he's old as shit. And the kind of all of these things are kind of going back and forth and really cloud the clarity of whether prison will be on the table or not, I think.
Yeah. Well, it's on the table. It just might not happen.
Whether it actually happens.
Yeah. Well, my point is even if it's not something that you typically by itself go to prison for.
Yep.
I would reckon that when it comes to the times where a person does go to prison, there are extenuating circumstances. And in this, I feel like manipulating a presidential election,
it's a pretty big one,
which you then go on to win.
Yeah.
And like I said, all of the fact that he has shown absolutely no remorse, continues to attack the judge.
Yep.
Like I feel like there's enough extenuating circumstances in here to justify that. And if
Yeah.
he were anybody else, he would absolutely, like, the judge would absolutely be like, yeah, fuck this guy. You're going to
Yeah,
prison.
totally. And yeah, but a little glimmer of light. The Secret Service has been preparing for Trump to potentially be incarcerated. So we know that they're at least getting their procedures ready for all that stuff.
Yeah. Next question would be, if he actually does go to prison, does that mean that he cannot run for president or win presidency? Well, I already talked to you about how historically there was another person who actually ran for president from prison. You can do that. There is nothing
Yeah.
in the Constitution that says that you cannot be a convicted felon in prison even and not be president. The only requirements are that you're 35, you're a natural born citizen, and you've spent at least 14 years in the United States.
Yeah, exactly. And like for Eugene Debs, name ID, it was probably a big challenge for running from prison. It's pretty hard to be out there campaigning if you're in prison. But for Trump, he's got 100% name ID.
Yeah.
So like there might be political implications from like, the image of Trump in a prison cell, but in terms of like campaigning, I don't know how much of a difference that'll actually make, which is kind of brings us to the next question is like, do we think this actually poses a political liability for Trump in becoming elected? What do you think about that?
So here's what I will say. Yes, but only if he gets prison time.
Interesting.
I think that if he gets anything less than that, then it won't matter. Because I feel like we're at the point where he has just done so much shady shit out in the open.
Yeah.
That unless there is an extreme measure taken that makes him seem even more unattractive, like sitting in a prison cell, that I just don't think it's going to matter. I feel like probation, I don't think that's going to, that's going to do much. If it's just a fine, if it's just a fine, it's not going to do shit.
Yeah. I couldn't agree with you more. Like this has been so hotly debated, and I think for all of the argumentation on kind of both sides of its political impact, I think like people are losing track of the history of this guy. 'Cause like, people will argue that like, oh, like, if one poll found that like earlier this year found that like 53% of voters in key swing states would refuse to vote for the Republican if he were convicted, which like sounds pretty good. But like another poll found that 67% of voters said a conviction would make no difference, and including 74% of independents. And so like, when you were really arguing over this middle set of voters and potentially, 74% of them don't give a shit even when they're reminded explicitly about his conviction, like that doesn't seem like it's a particularly salient issue.
Yeah.
And yet at the same time, tens of thousands of votes in the right places are all that it takes of people that are swing voters. So like the idea that we've got like someone who's finally been convicted of a crime, the idea that the Biden administration could take advantage of that in their campaign and their rhetoric and really double down on it, like that might all be true. So I think you could argue either way, except to your point, like I think we've got the memory hole problem. Because like at this point, we've memory holed like 2 impeachments, an attempted coup, the Access Hollywood tape, sexual abuse, like, civil liability in the E. Jean Carroll case, and like all of that stuff. And if the election were like in 3 weeks or a month, like maybe that wouldn't happen. But to your point, I think the only way that this stays relevant to people and stays a live issue that could actually push swing voters one way or another and not just get forgotten about, and is if like Trump is in prison. And ultimately, like I think that will be bad for him. A lot of people have argued that like if Trump's in prison, he's going to be able to run on it, and I think that only works with his super hardcore base, which are none of the people we care about anyway.
The poll that I'm most interested in is there was an ABC Ipsos poll where a fifth of Trump supporters said that they would reconsider or withdraw their support if he was convicted of a felony. Now, you hear convicted of a felony. I think when people hear convicted of a felony, asked them, like when that question is asked of them in a poll, they're thinking prison. Like they're going to think prison. So to your point, I think that if he has probation, if he's just given probation or a fine or whatever, the collective memory is going to disappear very quickly.
Yeah. Totally.
You know, I feel like you said, if it's probably going to result in the immediate right now, it's going to, my prediction is that it's going to result in a little bit of a boost for Biden, potentially enough to put him over Trump, because they've been fucking neck and neck with Trump having a slight lead. Like, I think that in the next few weeks, there's going to be a swing a little bit in favor of Biden. And then I think it's going to normalize until the sentencing. And then when the sentencing happens, if he's sentenced to probation or a fine, that's going to give Biden another temporary boost that then is going to normalize again. And then it's going to be back to neck and neck in time for the election. But if he is given prison time, which is something that is in your face every day, like you can't forget the fact that the guy is in prison. If he is given a prison sentence on July 11th and he is in prison, I do think that is going to swing the vote in favor of Biden. And I would predict, I do think that Biden's going to win if that happens. Like, hands down, easily going to win. Maybe not easily, but like handedly.
Yeah, we shall see. But, you know, my money is not on prison time in terms of the actual sentencing outcome. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll we'll celebrate again in just a few weeks. The other thing that could happen is he will definitely appeal the verdict in this case. He has that right.
They've already announced that they would.
Yeah. And there are a few, the appeal will occur, I believe, after sentencing. So like that's when it'll officially be filed. So, you know, we'll see how it actually comes out. I imagine they'll appeal on everything that's possible to be appealed on. And there are, you know, the case largely went smoothly, but there are definitely some opportunities for Trump to get appeals. There's also, like, you know, people in the jury room could come out and come out with like revelations that are problematic, that the jury was considering things that they were specifically disallowed from considering. And that would potentially result in having to retry the case. So like, we're not out of the woods yet. And, you know, justice has been served to a degree, and we'll see over the next, I think, few weeks and then a few months, whether this is like the final nail in this coffin, for sure.
Yeah. The last point that I want to make is that in a court of law, facts do matter. You can't just give political campaign speeches the entire time. You can't just scream witch hunt. That's just not effective.
Yeah.
And that's why he got convicted, because facts actually mattered in this.
Yeah.
Basically, the entire defensive strategy was political. All right.
Yes. Yeah.
Like their goal was not to get a not guilty verdict. Their goal was to get a hung jury. Like, meaning they wanted to sow some doubt in at least some of the jurors so that it would be a hung jury, and, you know, maybe they could get it dropped, maybe they'd have an appeal, or they could at least delay things until the election. That was the goal here. And it didn't work. You know, they agreed unanimously that he was guilty on all charges. So I don't think he is going to be given an appeal, but it is possible that he will be given a stay of sentencing until those appeals are denied.
Yep.
All right. That is possible. I don't know if that's what's going to happen, but that is absolutely possible. And one of the big defenses that I thought was really funny that they tried to use against Michael Cohen, who was the star witness, is basically saying, this guy is an unreliable witness because we know that he's committed perjury.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, yeah, but he did it for Trump.
Yeah.
Like
he did it about this, and then we proved that it was right. Yeah. And now it's time for a more lighthearted segment, Tips for Good. So Nathan, why do we do Tips for Good every week?
Well, Michael, I'm so glad you asked, because we do Tips for Good every week because, oh, Montana, give this child a home. Give him the love of a good family and a woman of his own. Give him a fire in his heart. Give him a light of his eyes. Give him the wild wind as a brother in the wild Montana skies.
Wow. Why are people giving children women? That doesn't seem.
No, the
that
love.
doesn't seem right.
Oh, wait.
Oh,
Wait.
give,
a woman of his own. Yeah, you're right. It
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. I think this is pretty fucked up, dude.
John Denver, fuck you.
Wow. I cannot believe that.
Oh, so you don't think of your wife as your woman? Like, not that she's your property, but that she's yours?
Now you're turning it back around on my marriage. It's good, nicely done. Well, that's fair. I mean, you're right. I mean, and ultimately, like, marriage, being happy, being together with a partner,
Yeah. What does that do, Michael?
That all makes the world a little bit brighter place, a little bit better. And so,
you know what? It does. I would say having a wife definitely makes the world a better place for me. Which, by a shocking coincidence,
yeah,
that is also why we do Tips for Good.
Oh shit, that is shocking. I am shocked.
I'm shocked.
shocked.
Shocked to find that making the world a better. Okay, whatever. Anyways, so Michael, what is our tip for good this week?
Okay, our tip for good this week is to help all of you folks who know that this is an incredibly important election year, who know that they should get involved, they should help organize, help be active, help recruit voters for Biden and against Trump, or help donate, but they're not sure what to do, not sure where their activism and their volunteering will be the most effective, not sure where their donation dollars should end up. And so rather than just doing nothing out of paralysis or, just the volunteering where it's most convenient or donating to the next Democrat who sends you an email, our tip for good is to go to votesaveamerica.com and either join their Organize or Else program, which is a Vote Save America program where you basically sign up and you are organized around high impact virtual and in-person volunteer opportunities that you can just sign up for and engage with wherever you are, whenever you can, so that basically they do all the legwork for you. You can just sign up and they point you right at the thing that you should be working on, like Senate races, down ballot races, the House of Representatives, state level elections that can all focus you on your activism on the things that are going to be most effective. Or if you're low on time, you can also set up a reoccurring donation at their anxiety relief program, which basically takes 100% of your donation and it puts it towards high impact down ballot races and grassroots organizing. And it'll also tell you at the end of the month where all of your money went, and basically selects the highest impact, most important races, all the way down, from, obviously the presidential race, but also House, Senate, and state level races, to put your money where it's going to make the most difference. So if you're not sure what you should be doing, but you should be doing something, go to votesaveamerica.com and sign up to volunteer. And if you have the cash, donate money. And that way you don't have to feel like you're not doing enough to make sure that America doesn't descend into fascism.
So that means that Chuck Schumer can stop sending me goddamn emails.
Dude, I get so many emails. I don't know how I got on this list, but I feel guilty unsubscribing. I get emails for a Sherrod Brown. I get a ton of emails from him. I get a bunch of emails from Chuck Schumer, a bunch of emails from Biden. I get a bunch of emails from Abigail Spanberger for her governmental campaign.
Well, at least that makes sense. You used to live in Virginia. You grew up in Virginia. You live in Washington. Why the fuck are you getting emails from Sherrod Brown?
Yeah, I know. It's because he's right neck and neck, Nathan. It's going to control the Senate. At least that's what he keeps telling me. So anyway, go to votesaveamerica.com. Sign up. Do what you can. Save America.
And that's tips for good.
So for our next segment, we're going to have less fun. Because Trump getting convicted of a crime, good news.
In other news, it's beginning to look a lot like fascism.
Exactly. Yeah, the fascist manifesto, dubbed Project 2025, is what we're delving into for our next segment. This shit is like an 800-page policy document, a like recruiting manual for thousands of ultra right-wing MAGA extremists to staff the government, a program to educate this personnel, these extremists, on how to most effectively run a right-wing fascist government, and a 180-day plan to help the next conservative far right-wing president, likely Donald Trump if he gets elected, to implement all of this within 180 days of becoming president. So buckle the fuck up. It's Project 2025.
Yeah. No, I remember, and this isn't necessarily the Republican National platform, but I remember in 2020, I was complaining about the fact that they didn't have a platform. It was literally just support Trump.
Yep.
And now I'm seeing this, and I'm like, never mind. Go back to not having a platform. Just
yeah. And we should talk about that because, like, to your point, this is not the Republican Party platform. But we should talk about the people that are here, and we should talk about this approach and how it mimics the approach that conservative organizations took to Trump staffing federal judgeships. Because ultimately, like, the best way to get Trump on your side is not to ask him what he wants to do. It's to give him a menu full of, like, authoritarian policies and steak and ketchup, and let him pick his favorite things. And, like, that's what we're looking down the barrel of here. So Representative Ayanna Pressley called the Project 2025 a, quote, far-right manifesto. It is a 1,000-page bucket list of extremist policies. The New Republic said that Project 2025 presents a, quote, Christian nationalist vision of the United States, one in which married heterosexuality is the only valid form of sexual expression and identity. All pregnancies would be carried to term, even if that requires coercion or death, and transgender and gender nonconforming people do not exist.
Yeah.
So if that doesn't sound scary enough to you, maybe you need to find a different podcast.
Yeah, if that doesn't sound scary to you, then why are you listening to us?
Yeah.
No, you should listen to us.
Yeah, you should listen more and more.
We're in the words of our good friend Jerry DeViller, we're smart guys.
Couple of smart guys.
I still think about that introduction sometimes. Anyways, so one of the biggest things that kept the first Trump administration from not being as bad as it could have been was the fact that we still do have a strong administrative state. Now, I feel like when a lot of people hear the term administrative state, like there's a little bit of a visceral reaction because, we don't want, because when you think of administrative, you might think of like nanny state. That's not necessarily what the administrative state means. What the administrative state basically means is that there are many positions within the federal government that are held by people that are not political, or at least not partisan. Yeah. That are there to basically just run shit. Yeah. All right. Exactly. To run things, to make sure that the government runs properly. Yeah. Right. Totally. And we want that to happen because the government does do a lot of stuff. Michael and I have talked a lot on the pod about how we do absolutely support ways of getting the federal government out of people's personal lives in terms of like controlling them. But when it comes to the administration of things like Social Security, when it comes to the administration of things like Medicare, when it comes to the administration of things like national parks,
student
love
loans.
that stuff, student loans,
food benefits, SNAP.
Yeah.
school funding, federal funding for schools.
Yeah. Like,
yeah.
we need people that have the experience of knowing just how to run things to be in government so that those things can be run.
Yeah.
And it's good to have that in the executive branch, because nothing really ever gets done in the legislative branch.
Sure.
Like, if every single action that the executive branch does, that the non-political positions within the executive branch does, always had to be approved by Congress, then the government would never be able to do anything.
Sure. It would grind to a halt. And ultimately, all of these executive agencies, all these administrative agencies operate on they're either established like in our foundational documents, or they operate on a charter from Congress. They're given a group of like a segment of the laws that they are in charge of administering from Congress, and then the executive branch, as the executor of those laws, is responsible for administering them, for actually going out and executing them.
Yeah. Now, to be clear, or pretty much all of these agencies were either given their rights from the Constitution, their authority from the Constitution, or through legislation, which means that there is still a checks and balances.
Exactly.
There are still checks and balances here.
Totally.
Right?
Yeah. And Congress at any point could be like, yeah, this agency is not doing what we want them to do right now. We're going to pass this law to change how they do things.
Yeah, exactly. So, and also, to be clear, that doesn't mean that the president, who will then appoint the head of most of these agencies, does not have influence on many of the directions that a lot of these agencies have. Like, the president absolutely does have an influence on the direction, but we're not talking about political questions. We are talking about questions of competency.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And there were some really terrible things that were prevented by having the right people in the right places during the Trump administration. Like, when he wanted to invoke the Insurrection Act to deploy troops against American citizens during the George Floyd protests. That would have been terrifying.
Yeah.
All right? Sending in the military against civilians, that is fascistic. Right? There was likely a dozen or so foreign policy decisions behind the scenes that he had people in his ear who were able to say, hey, that's a stupid fucking idea.
Yeah, totally. And ultimately, there are people that have to implement all of these changes, and whether they implement them in the harshest, worst possible way, or implement them in a way that's like consistent with the charter of the agency, is, not necessarily should be up to their discretion, but ultimately is. Like, you do your job well or not. And it just to have 4,000 political appointees, which is what we currently have, is basically replacing all of the leadership in these, administrative agencies to set the direction of the ship. But ultimately, like, if one of the tenets of this Project 2025 is to take those 4,000 people and who are political employees and expand that drastically so that 50,000 plus are political appointees, so that you can fire them at your administration, so their jobs are no longer protected from administration to administration, and you are then able to replace them with cronies and people that will do what you say. This is important, right? Because, like, think about Trump's executive actions, right? Trump had executive orders, which he wrote. They were done poorly and stopped by the courts. Who stops enforcing these things when they're stopped by the courts? The people performing their jobs, the people executing these actions. And so, like, if you're Trump and you author a fucking Muslim ban that is so on its face incredibly racist that it has to be stopped by the courts, but your executive agencies throughout your government is staffed with far-right MAGA cronies, they can just do it anyway. Like, it is an incredible erosion of the ability for our courts and Congress to check the executive branch.
Yeah.
Especially because you might think, oh, well, if we move from 4,000 to 50,000 political appointees, like, isn't that just going to mean they're all going to get stuck in the confirmation process in Congress? Well,
Mm.
One of the scary part of this process, like a scary part of this document, is how thoughtfully it has been put together, such that they have a mechanism for bypassing Congress to bypassing congressional confirmation of the vast majority of these positions. So it's literally just like put in whoever the fuck you want and with no congressional oversight.
Yeah. One of the things that I think we should point out about Project 2025, it was not written by idiots.
No.
It was written by very intelligent people that know exactly what they're doing.
Yes.
And that brings us to another reason why the first Trump administration wasn't as bad as it could have been. He was a fucking idiot.
Yes. Seriously.
Like, Trump was a fucking idiot.
Mm-hmm.
And there were some people that, albeit were part of the conservative establishment, that were terrible in so many ways, but weren't necessarily fascists.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
That were more so there for, like, you know, for tax cuts for the rich and shit. And some people who were there who were fascist, but like fascist light. Like, I would say Bill Barr, fascist, but fascist light.
Sure.
You know, the problem is the meticulousness of how this is crafted is intentional.
Yep.
And interestingly enough, to a certain extent, the incompetence that this will cause government to have is also intentional. Because remember, I talked about how one of the only way that the federal government really does operate and continue to run things is to have people who are in place who are experts, who know what they're doing, who have been doing this for a while, who are not necessarily political or partisan, but know what they're doing. So that way they can run shit. But for a lot of these agencies, the people that wrote this, they don't respect what they do. They don't like what they do.
Yes.
Which means that putting a bunch of incompetent MAGA people, that's not them being stupid. That's actually them being strategic.
Yes,
because they want people in there that don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, exactly. And to the degree that they do know something about how they to function in government, they want to educate them to only know how to implement far-right fascist policies. Like, they're like, literally one of the pillars of their plan is to develop a presidential administration academy to specifically train these people on how to administer these far-right MAGA policies.
Yeah.
So basically what the Federalist Society did for federal judgeships, where Trump appointed like an incredibly high number of federal judges, all of whom were extremely young and will serve for decades, all of whom were fanatically dedicated to right-wing orthodoxy over the rule of law. One of these appointees is currently overseeing one of Trump's trials and is right now delaying this trial to help him get elected. Like, exactly what the Federalist Society did for those judgeships to totally take over our federal judges. That's what Project 2025 seeks to do from a personnel perspective to the executive branch of government. And like, that is not an accident that this strategy is being employed here, because like, as you get deeper into this thing, it just gets fucking crazier and crazier. We'll talk through some of the policies, but like, this strategy of organizing a vast array of people fanatically dedicated to a right-wing MAGA far-right ideology and flooding the ranks with them such that there's no like amount of checks and balances that can like restrain them. Basically, our system is not built to be robust enough to overcome these people. This strategy is what was developed and used by the Federalist Society under the direction of Leonard Leo, who is this like prolific dark money organizer in the conservative movement. And he is also the one behind this plan, helping to organize the Heritage Foundation and 80 other think tanks to fundraise millions and millions of dollars and develop this particular plan. And so like, this is a tactic. These are tactics that have worked before, and there's no reason to think that they won't work again. But this time, with the branch of government having already eroded the judiciary, the branch of government that actually like has its hands in all of our lives every day. So it's like scary.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about some of the policies.
Yeah.
You already talked a little bit about the really strict anti-queer approach. Kind of in that same realm. And when I first bring this up, you might be like, "How the fuck is that in the same realm?" For them, it is. Let's talk about pornography. So
yes, because this policy document for the president of the United States has a section on fucking pornography. Like, oh, it's crazy.
So it says, quote, pornography should be outlawed. The people who produce and distribute it should be imprisoned. Educators and public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders, and telecommunications and technology firms that facilitate its spread should be shuttered. So let's understand what that means. First off, a bold-faced reading of that is fascist.
Yeah.
Like, to say that pornography, which is none of anybody's fucking business.
Totally.
All right.
Yeah.
Porn consumption is none of anybody's business. That it should be outlawed and the people that make it should be imprisoned. Like, that on its face is so fascist.
Yeah.
I mean, fun historical fact. That was actually one of the first things that the Nazis did, which was outlaw pornography and basically get rid of the entire Berlin movie system, like movie market, cinematic market, which is actually what led to the rise of Hollywood. Interestingly enough. The reason why Hollywood became what it was is because we had competition for a long time. Like, Germany was actually dominating a lot of the global film market, and then Nazi Germany comes around and completely fucks that up, and suddenly every film producer wants to come to the United States. That's one of the reasons why there were a lot of Jewish people in Hollywood. It's because they were trying to escape Hitler.
Interesting.
It's one of the same reasons why so many scientists that helped us out with the Manhattan Project were Jews that had tried to flee from Hitler. So that is straight up out of the fascist handbook. But here's the part of that should actually make you even more freaked out. Like, pay attention to the part where they talk about the people who produce it should be imprisoned. Educators, public librarians who purvey it should be classed as registered sex offenders.
Yep.
What they're saying, they're not talking about pornography, like internet porn, like, or Playboy magazines or whatever.
Yeah.
They're talking about, like, books that have sexuality in it.
Yep.
As a form of pornography that should be outlawed.
Yep. Literally calls for national books bans for certain books in schools. And it also creates a list of banned words for the federal government that would have to be deleted from...
Which, straight up from 1984. Like, that is straight up, that is newspeak from 1984.
Yeah, it's like, guys.
Bro.
There has never been a policy document so close to being implemented with such weak defenses in our judiciary and Congress to prevent it, that is as, like, invasive and dangerous as this document in this plan. I truly don't think that can be overstated. This is a plan with a roadmap to implementation that is well funded, that is well recruited, that has a 50-50 chance of getting a president who supports it in office, with a federal judiciary that has already been eroded to the point where it's just a coin toss whether a given judge will stand against it or not, with a 6-3 conservative majority on the Supreme Court and a Congress that can't pass anything, and a relatively viable legal theory called the unitary executive theory that basically vests in the executive a whole ton of powers to directly control every single action taken by the federal government. Basically, like, this is a blueprint to implementing the kinds of policies we're talking about directly into our lives and totally overhauling our government and eroding every single check and protection that could enable any of us to live in the kind of country, as flawed and problematic as it is, that we have lived in for our whole lives. It's fucking crazy. I know that's weird to say that right after we talked about pornography, but like to Nathan's point, like couched in the, you know, potentially less offensive, less alarmist version of like, hey, we shouldn't have pornography, which is obviously wrong, but like to many conservatives is okay, is this deeper agenda to potentially imprison educators around this ridiculous and false idea of like grooming and diversity and inclusion and all this stuff, to limit like the ability for our government to write down certain kinds of words in their policies. Like, we're talking a federal abortion ban. We're talking a top to bottom overhaul of the Department of Justice, specifically aimed at curtailing the independence of the DOJ, and ending the FBI's efforts to combat misinformation, and step up prosecutions for abortion, and step up implementation or execution of like our federal death penalty, like just consolidating the DOJ into the executive branch. I mean, it already is, but consolidating its independence so that it is just another arm for the president to go after whatever people he wants to prosecute.
Yeah.
That is fascism. That is authoritarianism. Like, plain and simple.
We are so fucked.
I know. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. Also, like, just basic stuff, basic conservative stuff, eliminating all of the environmental protections activities from the Department of Energy and the EPA. Like, that's been on the list for a while. Yeah, federal abortion ban. On page 6 of the booklet, it says, quote, "The Dobbs decision is just the beginning." And this is especially scary given that Trump has like not ruled out prosecuting, you know, people who are pregnant when they pursue abortions. Yeah, eliminating the Department of Education, which like that's really important, right? Like the Department of Education is the implementation arm for civil rights protections for students, and funding for K through 12 education. Like this is like a doomsday document. And like, yeah. I haven't heard anyone talking about it in any kind of substantial way. It's like when you search about this, all the only thing people talk about is Schedule F, which is the replacement of government workers, and makes it sound like a personnel plan. Like actually coming and finding the policy agenda here is kind of tricky because like it is flying fucking under the radar.
Yeah. And like some of the terms that they're saying that they want to delete from every regulation piece of legislation that exists, like it says, quote, it starts with deleting the terms sexual orientation and gender identity, diversity, equity, and inclusion, gender equality, gender equity, gender awareness, gender sensitive, abortion, reproductive health, reproductive rights, and any other terms used to deprive Americans of their First Amendment rights out of every federal rule, agency regulation, contract, grant, regulation, and piece of legislation that exists. And I would just like to draw your attention to the whole the First Amendment justification, because this is the right-wing view of the First Amendment that we hear all the time, which is basically that the First Amendment gives Christian nationalists the right to pass any fucking law they want to based on their religion, which is such a backwards view of the concept of freedom of religion. But that's what they're always saying. They're like, oh, well, you know, if we allow for anybody who is not Christian to, you know, or anything that I believe is anti-Christian to exist, then that is an infringement on my religious liberty, which is just such a stupid argument. Just such a stupid point. All right. The First Amendment prohibits the establishment of a like the state establishment of a religion. All right. Congress shall make no laws respecting the establishment of religion or free practice of. All right. That means that you cannot make laws that solely come from religion, and to pass laws that ban discussions of things like gender equality because you say that gender equality violates your religion or some shit, and then to justify it by saying that by using the First Amendment is just so backwards. That is newspeak.
Yeah.
All right? Words don't mean anything.
Yeah.
All right?
I think that's so important to call out because for Christian nationalists, the people behind this movement, freedom, the word freedoms, the words freedom, liberty, things like that, actually mean power.
Yeah.
It's freedom to do whatever the fuck we want and not have to respect anybody else or yield anybody else or give up any power at all. Which makes something like one of the doctrines of this project to, quote, secure our God-given individual rights to live freely, what our Constitution calls the blessings of liberty. Right? That is, once you understand that this concept of freedom and liberty is actually a concept of power, right?
Yeah.
It's not about freedom. It's not about independence. It's about control. Then that becomes a literal doctrine of Christian nationalism, right? If you just if you just sub out those two things, because that's exactly what Nathan's talking about, and that's exactly the argument that they keep making.
Yeah. We want you to be free, which is why we want to arrest you if you watch porn.
Exactly. Yeah. So like Trump has joked about being a dictator on day one, and like when everybody was like, what the fuck? The potential president of the United States is going to be a dictator for a day. He like joked that we were all overreacting and he thought it was hilarious and all this stuff. Except this is literally a plan to create an powerful executive with a government staffed by far-right fanatics who will not check his power in any way, and cronies dedicated to carrying out whatever like authoritarian regime he plans. It's literally a roadmap for a far-right authoritarian state. And again, I can't stress this enough. It's a plan to do that with no ability to check this power in any meaningful or significant way. It's like, not only is it a plan, it's possible.
Look, Biden sucks.
Yeah.
But Trump cannot be president.
And now it's time for one of our favorite segments,
Ass Hat of the Week.
So Nathan, who is our ass hat this week?
Well, Michael, I am so excited to introduce, I'm pretty sure for the first time on our show, presidential candidate Robert Fitzgerald Kennedy.
Oh,
Robbie Ken, come on down.
Wow. Good old Bobby Kennedy.
Good old RFK Jr.
Yeah. My goodness. I was wondering when he would come on our show. He says enough crazy shit, like, brainworms and all that stuff to really warrant some time on our show. So,
yeah.
Okay. If I scroll through my, menu of options of what kind of crazy shit RFK happened to be saying today, where should I be looking, Nathan? What the fuck did he do to get on our show?
Look no further than his speech at the Libertarian National Convention, which, I mean, there's your first mistake.
Mm-hmm. I can't even believe they all like have a convention, like they get together. Like the convention's like, hey, arrive here at this place, and they're like, don't tell me what to do. I'm not going. You can't tell me to go there. I'll be there when I want or anywhere.
Yeah, it's. I joke about it, but I actually do have more respect for libertarians than I do for Republicans.
Sure.
Because at least most of the time, libertarians tend to be more principled. Like they're wrong on
bad principles, yeah.
On most things, on like half of their stuff. But there are some places where they're better than Democrats on. Like when it comes to foreign policy, libertarians tend to be great, Anyways, so RFK Jr. was speaking to this crowd of libertarians. And so you remember that thing that happened 4 years ago, where everything shut down because there was a deadly virus?
Yes. I think I remember that. It was the Spanish flu, right?
I have many responses to that I probably shouldn't say. So he was talking about being at a convention where he wasn't wearing a mask, and this NBC News crew approached him to ask him about it. And, this was at the point where it was kind of understood the best way to prevent yourself from spreading the disease is to wear a mask. One of the heights of the pandemic where it was really necessary to keep wearing a mask. I mean, even later in the pandemic, I think it was still important to be doing that, but like in the height of it. So he said, quote, "They asked me why I wasn't wearing a mask, which no one was, except for the NBC film crew. They said, wasn't I scared of dying of COVID? And I said to them, there's a lot of things worse than dying. And they said to me, like what? And I said, like living like a slave."
So best case scenario, he was like, you know what? Now, shit, I've walked myself into a corner. I've got to come up with something worse than dying. Slavery. That's not a bad option. Best case scenario, maybe that's what he was doing.
Yeah. No, this motherfucker was comparing wearing masks to slavery.
It's bad. Oh god.
Like, I just okay.
Oh boy.
Honestly, I don't get particularly oversensitive about stuff in politics most of the time, but if there's one thing I can't fucking stand, it's when people compare things to slavery that are not even close. Like, I don't even like it when people compare things to slavery that could actually have a bit of a leg to stand on. Like, I don't like using terms like wage slavery.
Sure.
Because I, in the United States, I think, yes, that it is terrible the way that our economic system often exploits people, but like, is it slavery?
Sure.
Is it actually slavery?
Exactly. Let's preserve the power. Let's not dilute the power of the most shameful and disgusting and horrible institution in American history.
Yeah. Like the only common practice that I usually am completely okay with calling slavery is like prison labor, because the 13th Amendment literally carves that out as an exception.
Yeah.
So like it is like, according to the 13th Amendment, it is slavery.
State sanctioned slavery. Yeah.
Yeah. But like, I hate it when people, I don't even like it when people compare things like that, but to compare mask wearing,
Nathan, you're telling me
a piece of fabric on your face to slavery. Like, I think about enslaved Africans, back in like the 1850s, like working on a field after enduring the horrors of chattel slavery, of torture, and they're working the fields and they're talking to each other, and one of them's like, "Hey, you think this is bad? One day our ancestors might have to wear a mask during a deadly pandemic."
Not even have to. One day our ancestors might be asked about why they are not wearing a mask during a deadly pandemic. It might be strongly encouraged. Yeah,
God,
so they're like,
it's so fucking stupid. Like,
that's
God,
fucking nuts.
The RFK is such a dunce.
What an
he is such
an idiot.
A dunce. I mean, his whole campaign is basically built on, I am against big pharma. And then he was doing an interview on Breaking Points where Crystal Ball was asking him, okay, so do you believe in you talk a lot about problems in healthcare, problems with the pharmaceutical industry. Do you believe in nationalizing big pharma? He's like, no, I don't believe in that. Oh, okay. Well, do you believe in like Medicare for all? Because you talk a lot about healthcare. No, I'm not for that. It's like, okay, so what is his problem with pharma? Mm-hmm. Vaccines.
Yeah, he's like, just the science. Just the only part like, that they get right.
I am against big pharma. I am fighting against big pharma. Great. So nationalize big pharma? No, don't take vaccines.
Yeah, exactly.
God.
Guys, we really should attack big pharma from the ground up. We should just stop taking their products. And sure, many of you will die, but
No,
that's the price.
Lord,
I'm,
Lord, it's
yeah,
Lord
exactly.
Farquaad. Yeah, some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Honestly, that's exactly what
Like,
it is.
This guy, he's a disgrace to the Kennedy name, and I don't even like the Kennedys that much.
Yeah. Normally, I'm not okay with people comparing political, policies to Lord Farquaad. Nathan's thing with slavery is me and Lord Farquaad because he's clearly the worst. But but in this case, that's very, very accurate.
Yeah, you know, I'm pretty sure that the only reason why that movie called him Lord Farquaad is because of that scene with the three little pigs, where their accent made it sound like his name was Lord Fuckwad. Which I think would make it an apt comparison to RFK Jr.
I think so too. Actually, Nathan, he's not a fuckwad. He's an asshat.
He is an asshat.
So congratulations to Royal fucking Kennedy. Congratulations to RFK for being this week's asshat. And you know what, RFK? Don't take medicine. Please, don't take any medicine.
Asshat of the week.
And now we will end our show as we usually do with our highlights. So Nathan, what's your highlight this week?
My highlight this week is that this last weekend, it was my wife's and my wedding anniversary.
Oh, congratulations.
We have now been married for fuck.
Oh man.
For 6 years.
Air.
For 6 years. For 6 years.
Can't believe you write it down. You're allowed to prepare.
No, what's funny is Jess actually forgot. I had to remind her. We've now been married for 6 years, and to celebrate that, there's this local outside museum called the Frontier Culture Museum in our town that has a bunch of really cool houses from from various different different civilizations and different countries that that were houses made on the frontier, and you get to hear a lot of really interesting facts about examples of immigration to the United States, the ways in a lot of the ways in which different countries brought their culture to the United States, what life was like. We get to go into the houses, which are actually like authentic houses that were straight up taken down from where they originally were and then built back up in the museum. So there's a house that used to be in Germany that they just took down and then built right there so that we could walk through it and see what it looked like. It was really cool. It's a really great place. We have a annual pass, which is awesome. And we took my daughter there, and I was just thinking about how wonderful it's going to be when she's old enough to understand it, and we can take her there. She can learn stuff. She can run around. Like those are the types of kid memories that I'm really looking forward to creating. So it was a really nice experience.
Awesome. That's great, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah. What about you, Mike? What's your highlight?
Well, I used up my highlight from this past weekend in our last episode because it was perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and do another perspective highlight. This coming weekend, I am going to do an activity called backcountry skiing for the first time, which is basically where you ski up a mountain and then ski down it. So that should be super exciting. We're going to one of the volcanoes in this area, and we're going to be skiing in the backcountry. So it's pretty exciting in June of all times. It's crazy. And so yeah, that's my
have fun, brother.
Thank you, dude. I appreciate it. And now we will thank all of the incredible people that make this show possible. So thank you to our patrons, Jerry DeViller, Tyler Bloom, Kyle Chaska, Fade Out Scoop, and Tobias Johnson for all they do to make the show possible. And thank you to our amazing editor, Kayla, for editing this show, and we really could not do it without you. And thank you, dear listener, for listening to The Perspectrum, and you'll hear from us again.